All right, so here we go. Now look at this thing right here. You've probably seen this. You saw this last year in Algebra 1, didn't you? A ton. And I don't know, maybe even in pre-algebra. Every once in a while, these things will pop up in geometry. That's why I wanted to hit this as a review so that you know what's going on. I could put arrows on the ends of all of these. And let's finish putting the arrows on. Let's do this horizontal one right here. We call it a what? Anybody know what that name is? Say it.
Y-axis.
And this is the, is it the Y? It's the x-axis, right? It's the x-axis. The horizontal is the x, all right? And of course the vertical would be the y-axis. I don't know why I put a little dash there. It seems like they do that. Yep, they kind of do that in the book, okay? So it's the x-axis and the y-axis. The whole thing, if you want to be real particular about it, they call it a coordinate plane. Coordinate plane. We'll talk next week about what a plane is. A coordinate is basically just a point, the location of a point, where a point's located. Okay, it's called the coordinate plane. There's other names too. I don't know if you'll ever see this or not, but I'll just throw it in there. Sometimes they call it the Cartesian plane, named after a guy with a girl's name. His name's Rene Descartes. All right, and so they named you don't have to write this down, but it's Descartes, and it looks like Descartes, but it's Descartes. It's a French name, I believe. Rene Descartes. I looked him up at some point in my life. I don't remember much about him, but I know he's a famous mathematician, philosopher kind of guy way back, Rene Descartes. All right. Anyway, I guess he came up with this. I don't really know the history. Frankly, I don't really care, okay, about the history of it. But I do know this is called the x-axis, is called the y-axis. The whole thing is called the coordinate plane. It's also broken up into 4 chunks. Do you see this area right here, 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 and here? What do we call those things? A quadrant. Very good. All right, I'll just write the word up here, quadrant. Quad. What's the prefix quad mean? 4. Good. Okay. In college, they always say, hey, I'll meet you in the quad. The quad usually is like a square or rectangular area, grass area or something like that, and that's why they call it a quad, because there's 4 sides to it, okay? They'll call it like that. All right, so that's the quadrant. We number the quadrants, and they have to be in a specific order. The first quadrant, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they usually write with Roman numerals for whatever reason. And the top right one is the first quadrant. Yep, that's 1. And then which way do you go? You go to the left, or you go, is it clockwise or counterclockwise? Counterclockwise, right. That would be 2, and then down here would be 3 and 4, right. And there's a lot of times I'll say, okay, look in the second quadrant, and then you should just be automatically know exactly where the second quadrant is, all right? Let's see, what else do we have? We talked about the word coordinate. That's where points are located, and that's what we use over here. We find out where points are. So you could have a point right here, but these are all number lines, aren't they? This axis. Oh, by the way, we said axis. What about the plural of axis? What's the plural of axis? Axi, that's a good guess, but it's not. It's axes, A-X-E-S, all right? So we say we have 2 axes, all right? 1 axis, 2 axes. You got that? So right here we've got a point, and these are number lines. The axes are actual number lines. So it starts here at 0, and to the right would be what type of numbers to the right? It would be positive. So we just kind of mark them off like this, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And of course, if you go to the left, what kind of numbers are they? They're negative. And I'll just do a few of these. -1, -2, -3, -4. Good. Now, on the y-axis, if you go up, what kind of numbers are they? Right, up is positive, and we'll just do 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And of course, down, negative. Good. -1, -2, -3, -4. All right. Now, if you have a point, tell you what, we'll just say it lines up right there. If you have a point, you can find the location of the point, or the word is what? Coordinate. If I say find the coordinate of point A, let's say. All right, if I say find the coordinate of point A, it means where is it located? So you start right here. Of course, right here is 0, isn't it? But we also have a fancy word. It's not really that fancy. It's origin. Very good. Okay, it's the origin. The origin's where you begin, right? So that's where you start. You start right here. And we always go, in order to get to a point, we just don't go straight to that point. We can only, it's like being in New York. You ever drive in New York? Or you probably don't drive, but I mean, you ever, ride in a car in New York? Maybe there's one road, I think Broadway kind of goes diagonal, but almost every single road in New York City goes east-west or north-south, okay? Except for Broadway, kind of cuts through them. But let's think of we're in a city, all right? You can only go blocks. You can't go across like this or you'd be hopping on top of buildings. We're not Spider-Man or anything, all right? So we got to do this. We got to go this way, we go to the right, and then we go up and down. So we go in the X direction first, and it matters. It definitely matters which direction you go first. You go X first, and you go Y. Always starting at the origin, because the origin means the beginning. So in order to get to this point, what do I have to do? I have to go which direction? Right. To the right, how many places? 4 places, and then I go up, let's just say it's right here, 2 places. So I go to the right 4, and I go up 2. Now, it'd be kind of a pain, wouldn't it, to write on there, okay, go to the right 4 and go up 2. So we have a better way to do that. And we call that, okay, we call it a coordinate, but we also call this whole parentheses and comma situation right here. Do you remember what we called that? There's 2 things. Good. It's called an ordered pair. You've heard that before, haven't you? All right, this is all review. Good. I hope it's review. All right, so it's called an ordered pair. Remember, it matters which direction you go first. So what's the first letter? The first letter is X, and then Y. Say what? Sure, why not? I'm writing it down. I shouldn't have all the fun, should I? All right, all right, so X and Y is the ordered pair. That's the direction. So if we start at the origin, thank you. Oh, good. We go here, and then we go over 4, to the right 4, I should say. Because if I said over 4, that could mean here too, couldn't it? If I just said over. So I say specifically what? To the right 4, and then what? Up 2. So you put the 4 here and the 2 here. That's your coordinate. That's your ordered pair for that point right there. This is all review, right? I hope. All right. So that point right there is 4, 2. Make sense? What's the coordinate of the origin? 0, 0. Good. So the origin is at 0, 0. What about, let's go over here. Let's go right there. What's the coordinate of that point?
-3, 4.
Good. -3, 4. That's all you got to say. -3, 4. But when you write it, don't just write it like this with a comma in between. Make sure you put parentheses around it. That is an ordered pair. You got it? It's ordered. The reason they use that word, it makes sense. Ordered pair. The order, it has to be in a certain order. The X has to go first, the Y has to go second, and it's a pair. How many things are in this? It's a pair. 2, right? So 2 things. So it's in a certain order, X first, then Y, and it's a pair because there's 2 things. Good. Let's see. Let's do another one. Let's put a point right here, right on the X-axis. Let's find the coordinate of that. 4, 0?
0, 4.
-4. Did you say negative? You got to go negative, okay, because we go to the left. If you go to the left, that's -4. So this point right here is -4. Then how far up and down did we go? We went nothing. We went 0. So you put 0. So that's -4, 0. 4, 0 is at a completely different spot, isn't it? And people say, well, it's only negative. Who cares? But look, it's a completely different point. Okay, it's not even close, is it? Even though you think, some people say it's only a negative. Negatives mean a lot. They really do. They change the number completely. That point right there would be what? 4, 0, okay? What about this point right here? Good. So you go 0 on the X direction, right? So you got to go X first, and then you go Y. So you don't go anywhere on the X direction, and then you go -2 on the Y direction. So that point right there, you can jot it in there. It's getting a little messy here. 0, negative, oops, forgot the negative. There you go, 0, -2. All right, and of course, let's say you put a point right here. What would that be? That'd be 0, 3. You got it. I think we've covered them all, haven't we? Well, if you had a point, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's say you had a point in the first quadrant. Let's just talk about the signs, okay, of the point in here. What's the sign of any point in the first quadrant? So you go X, you go to the right, which is positive, then you go what?
Positive, positive,
Up, positive, positive. Good, that's what I want to get at, okay? What about in the second quadrant? Just the signs. It's negative, positive. The third quadrant? Negative, negative. And then the fourth quadrant? Positive, negative. Very good. All right? That comes in handy from time to time. We good with that? It's pretty simple stuff, isn't it? Let me see. Yeah, anything I write, you can write. You shouldn't have to ask, should you? Sometimes they'll do this. Let's pause this for a second. I'll clean up all this mess. All right, let's do this. This is something that they'll do every once in a while. They'll say, it says, here's an example. You don't see it because you don't have a book, okay? But I'll read it. It says graph a polygon, which means a shape. All right, we'll talk more specifically about what polygons are later on. All right, but right now we're just talking about a shape with vertices. What does that mean, vertices? Did we talk about a vertex? I don't think we talked about a vertex, did we? I mean, it means the points. Okay, vertices is plural for vertex. We're getting into some stuff right now that we'll be talking about specifically in geometry not too long from now. But it says with vertices, and here's what they do. They give you some points. They give you 4 points. They give you -3, 3. They give you point B, which is at 1, 3. They give you point C. Oops. Let's go that way. Which is at 0, 1. And then they give you point D, which is at -4, 1. That's a 4. Yeah, and basically you just draw the thing. That looks kind of ugly. That's supposed to be a 3 right there, okay? So, if I would take some extra time, I'd make sure that these points were all the same distance. But you gotta, try your best to make it, or you can use graph paper if you like. You don't have to use graph paper on this, but if you want to, feel free. Alright, so I actually have a graph somewhere that I've already made up, but I'm just not going to take the time to find it and put it up here. But let's just plot these things. And let's do it in a different color. I'm tired of just doing everything in black. It's -3, 3. So you start at the origin, you go -3, 3. You could put the numbers in here if you want to, but I'm just going to count. So which direction do we go? Give me specifically, which direction do we go first? Left. 3 places. 1, 2, 3. And then we go what? Up. 1, 2, 3. So there it is. Alright? What about this one? That's point A, and I'll put an A right there. Point B is 1, 3. So we start at the origin, we go to the right 1 and up 3 right there. That's point B. Then this is 0, 1, so we go 0 in the X direction and 1 in the Y direction. So that's right there, right on the axis, isn't it? And this is -4, 1, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left, +1, and it's going to be right there, and that's point D. Yeah, and you connect the lines. I don't know how straight they're going to be because I just kind of... Yeah, that's not bad. Oops, right there. I'm off a little bit, but it's close enough. You get the idea. That's not too bad, is it? Alright, so there you go. So there you go. That's it. It says, just graph it. It says, graph a polygon with these vertices. Polygon means a certain shape. There's your 4-sided figure. Okay? And we'll talk about this in another chapter. We have a whole entire chapter just for this thing right here. Anybody have any clue what this thing is called? You don't have to know, but it's a parallelogram. Very good. Wow. How do you know so much? Parallel. If I could spell right. Parallel. Did I spell it right? It looks weird. Okay. O-gram. Alright, so that's a parallelogram. We'll talk about that at some other point and get a lot more specific about it. But that's basically, that's about as hard as it gets right there, okay, with what we're going to do. We go with this stuff? Pretty basic, pretty simple. It's a lot of review, so that's it. Alright, so I'm going to give you section 07, and that'll actually be the... I'm going to give you a worksheet on 07, and that'll be the last one of the worksheets we do. Next week, we'll start, I'll give you the books, and we'll start with some real geometry. Yeah, I hope you're that excited once you start on it. All right.